Business, a person's occupation, profession, or trade. Connection, a relationship in which a person or idea is linked or associated with something else. Welcome to Business Connection. Each week, our program will offer inspiration to navigate the business world. Information you can use to succeed in any field. And we will help you focus on your goals. Join us now for Business Connection with your host, B.C. Clark.
Welcome to the Business Connection. I'm your host, B.C. Clark. As you know, I interview business owners across the state. Well, some outside of the state as well. But today my guest is Rebecca Fegan. Now, Rebecca is one of the elites in Toastmasters. However, that's not why we're here today. We're going to talk a lot about the book she wrote, and it's called The Fegan Method. But first of all, she's going to tell us a little bit about herself and her journey, and we'll go from there. How about that?
Okay,
Rebecca,
sounds good.
Welcome to the show.
I am so glad to be here.
I'm
thank you
glad to
for
be
that
here.
invitation.
You're welcome. Yes.
One of the things that I have discovered is that with the connections that I've got through Toastmasters, I've got opportunities to visit and talk to people from places that I never would have known, people I would never would have known. And that fascinates me. I love travel. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, I have been a teacher for 50 years, half a century.
Yes.
I'm so old.
No, but think of how many lives you've impacted over that 50 years.
So I've had
Thousands
of students.
Yes.
And from age 3 to, I believe the oldest one I had was 78. And she wanted to play piano and thought that she couldn't because she was too old, and she plays piano now.
Wow.
Yeah, it's relative of some friends that we know in common. So the thing that I discovered when I was in school was that people used to pigeonhole me and say, oh, well, you can't do this, you can't learn this, you can't do that. And then I would. And it's just like, of course I can learn that. Well, of course I can do that. Got to college, and they said, oh, well, you're a music major, so we'll put you in the very easiest math problem, and the very easiest English, and the very easiest...
They had no idea who you were.
So I took calculus, and Renaissance history, and Renaissance literature, and they said, oh, you can't do that? That'll affect your grade. And I says, of course it'll affect my grade. I'm not in it for the grade. And they go, what? So they were surprised to find out that it actually had a positive impact. I ended up with a 3.67. And I learned all sorts of things, everything from history to camp craft. Yes, that came in handy when I was a Girl Scout leader.
Yeah, of course, yeah. Well, you know, one thing can I say that, because I've known you for a little bit, I think the one thing that whatever you learn, you never forget.
Right, it's exactly right.
Yeah.
I have learned, I play every instrument. So band, orchestra, piano, voice, drums, drum kit, you know, I play them all.
Yeah.
And I even play some instruments you've never heard of, like cornetto and sackbut.
That's right, I have.
And crumhorn. Crumhorn is funny. Crumhorn is like a wooden saxophone that sounds like a kazoo.
Oh, wow.
It's the weirdest thing.
Isn't that something that but I noticed that about you, especially, and I noticed that in Toastmasters most. Because, I mean, the quirkiness and and the knowledge of everything. I was like, wow, she's never forgotten anything she's learned in her life.
Right. And the reason that this works is because I learned very, very early from my parents how to go about learning. Mm-hmm. Now, the interesting thing about that is that everybody gathers information differently. So people will look at it and see it, or they'll hear it, or they'll read it, or they'll get their little fingers dirty in it, and you know, like, oh, I learned how to plant stuff in there. They come in with dirt under their nails and a big smile on their face. Okay, so they're gathering information all differently. But once they've gathered the information, the process to learn it is the same for everybody. And once you've got a process, it goes in and it stays in.
Yes. You know, it takes years for people to really master that. You just were born with it.
No, actually.
I'm just kidding. I'm saying, because you're so good at
But I started early. Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Well, and I think that, like today, I think a lot of times teachers are trying to teach kids one way that they know, and all kids are different.
Right.
You know, and so they have to spend a little time with them to find out how they learn.
Well, and
before
not
they can
only
try
that,
to train them or teach them.
When you end up with kids in a classroom, then you have to find the lowest common denominator
Yes.
where everybody's starting. Well, for this one, that would be so boring that they would just
Go
cry,
crazy.
you know.
Yes,
and
you
this
gotta
one,
put them somewhere
it's
else.
so far beyond them they can't keep up. And like I said, everybody gathers the information differently, but once they get it gathered, it's all the same
It's all
process.
the same process.
So what happens then with your the ideas behind how school works is that you have one class for math and one class for English and one class for history and one class, and they don't realize that they're all the same class. And
Yes.
it ignores the fact that they have life experience. So somebody coming in from Chicago, living in downtown Chicago, will have different life experiences than somebody coming from western Nebraska.
Right.
Okay? And yet, those are completely discounted when they go to school.
Right. They don't take into account of that. No.
Right. Well, so that was one reason that I really, really enjoyed my studies in college, because I had this one teacher in the history, and he was teaching Renaissance history. And you think, oh my gosh, boring. Oh, heavens.
That's what I would have said.
But, you know, we were discussing the Medicis, who were the ruling family down in Florence. And he went into the history of the family, the politics, the economy, the science, the culture. And I'm thinking, why didn't they include all of that in all of my math, my classes in high school? I would have just jumped into that instead of, okay, now on this date, write this date down. This is important. Yeah. I had one friend who was taking a history class with me, and she was in tears because she had gone through the book and had highlighted all the things that she thought would be on the test. There wasn't a single line in that book she hadn't highlighted. She thought she had to memorize the whole book. And so she said, how are you studying? I said, well, I'm reviewing my notes. No, how are you studying? I says, I'm reviewing my notes. And then I came out and she got a C minus and I got an A. And she couldn't figure it out. And I said, because I processed the information so I can remember it. So yeah, do I remember the stuff that I studied in that class? Oh, yeah. But that's because not only did I learn the stuff that he was talking about and the stuff that we were reading about, but I related it to the stuff that was happening at the same time in the music, in the physics, you know, what were they studying back then, and the sciences and everything.
That's a disconnect right there.
Right.
Right? Because, you know, when I don't date myself, but I remember like in high school, in grade school, you know, we studied everything together. You know, our math, our science, everything was one class. We didn't leave that class. I think the transition is when you're moving from, you know, the grade school to the junior high. And at one time they had it so that well, in Louisiana anyway, it was like you had your 1st through 6th grade, and then junior high was 7th and 8th only,
Right.
and then high school was 9th through 12th. Well, even in junior high back then, it wasn't separated. You had all the subjects together. Now, when you got to high school in 9th grade, everything changed. So what you've known for the past 8 years in learning changed. And if you didn't get that transition or understand how that was going to work before you move over into high school, then you started out with a disconnect.
Oh, exactly. Exactly. I saw that, well, I get to date myself. Yes, I taught in one-room schoolhouses. One-room schoolhouses.
Yeah.
So you had the kindergarten and the 1st graders were sitting in the same room as you were teaching the 8th graders. So they got it in 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade. They heard it all the way through there. So the people that were graduating from 8th grade from this country school were miles ahead of the kids going to public school because they only had, this is 5th grade, this is what you study in 5th grade, no problem.
Right.
I was in a lab school, which meant we were the rats that they tried everything on. And they did a reading program in 4th and 5th grade. No, 5th and 6th grade. It was 5th and 6th grade. SAR, I guess what it was called. But you'd go in and there would be a whole box full of folders and you would pick out the color that you were assigned and you'd go through and you'd read it and then you'd take the test and then you'd put it back and then you'd take the next one and you'd take the next one. And as long as you kept on passing, you kept on moving up. There were some kids in that class that were jumping 2 grades. And they were 5th grade and they were reading on a 9th grade level. And that was perfect for this because then you got to move at your own pace. And you got to learn exactly what you were interested in. And what was really fun about that is that the stories that we were reading included things about history and music and all of the different subjects that you could imagine, and it kept your interest, and yet you were reading.
So let's talk a little bit about the Fegan method. And I know since we've been talking about it a little bit anyway, but how did you, what made you come up with well, number one, talk that process of what you were doing when you said, you know what, I get it. I get it. I know that I have a proven method that can help kids. And so what was that like when you first started doing that? When you first getting that inkling, you know?
Believe it or not, it was when I started teaching. And I was here in 1968. So,
That's the year I graduated high school.
I was still in school. When I started this method, I was 3. My parents were using this method, but they just hadn't written it down and they hadn't codified it. You know, you look at the music, you find out what do you know, what key are you in, what fingers do you have to use, how do you count this? You know, the stuff that you could see right off. Then you had to look for things that were weird, like sharps, flats, and weird rhythms that you may not have run into. And then you process that and you try to play it and find out, this I can sight read, this I cannot, this is going to need practice. So here's the thing, when people take their kids to music lessons and then go home to practice, sometimes they set a timer and say, okay, you have to practice for 30 minutes. Well, what if they want to practice for more than that? What if they get it done in 10? Okay. Then there are the ones that say, well, you have to play this song 22 times. Well, the problem is they get the beginning and they get the end really well, and the stuff in the middle, the good stuff, the wonderful stuff, they mess up on that every time. So people would come to their lessons and I say, I know how you practiced. And they go, because what that does is that it teaches a muscle memory for that particular song.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as you're done with that particular song, it goes away.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not training the mind, they're training the fingers. So it's kind of Pavlovian, where every time you ring a bell, the dog drools because he thinks he's going to get paid. Oh, hey, I get some treats now, right? Okay, can you imagine that dog after he gets out of the program and he's sitting on the front porch and the ice cream truck drives by? Mm-hmm. Now, does he still drool? Dogs don't like ice cream. Okay, so chasing the poor hot dog man down the street because he's got bells on it. So it is a behavioral modification, not a mental modification. Mm-hmm. And when you are working with children, behavioral modification works just on the surface level. So they learn what they need to learn to pass the test, and then it's forgotten. They don't learn the material that is going to help them to move on to the next thing. It doesn't stick with them. Well, this method sticks with them because then you're working, after you've gone through it and you found out what needs work, you're working on just the part that needs work. You're not working on the stuff you know already. Mm-hmm. And you can slow it down, speed it up, change your fingering, whatever. And that's music. And it works the same on everything else. So if you're having problems with your backhanded stroke in tennis, you have to find out exactly what's wrong. Oh, you're turning your wrist, you're not supposed to turn your wrist. Oh, right. You do the same thing in ballet.
And bowling.
How do you do that? How do you remember this stuff that happened in history? Well, you relate it to other things that you are already got. Mm-hmm. So all of the information that you need is in here. You just have to relate the new stuff to the old stuff.
So you can get it.
And they don't do that.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. So when you started writing the book, what was it that you were wanting to accomplish?
I wanted to show people that there was a faster way to learn, a more efficient way to learn, and to learn on a deeper level. Mm-hmm. So that stuff that they wanted to incorporate into themselves, they would have access to for as long as they wanted.
That's good. Yeah, no, that's awesome. Yeah. And I think that I always love it when someone who has, been in the field for this long and knew that there was a problem, come up with a solution. So that, because people are suffering,
yeah.
They don't have that ability, and a lot of them, even today, it's worse.
Right.
I remember going to school, and you know what? I mean, to me, I remember all the songs. I remember all the things that kids don't have that anymore in school.
No.
You don't have that time where you are singing the songs and you talk about the chickens and all this kind of stuff, right. And Farmer Bill, and they don't do that anymore. I mean, for God's sake, they took writing cursive out of the school. How are these kids supposed to sign their name? You would be surprised at the number of young individuals that I meet that trying to link the letters to sign their name and not do it in a print.
Right.
So they just connect. They write a letter,
and then they
connect. Yeah. And the thing is that I know it sounds funny to us, but that's a real problem.
Yes, it is.
And we had shop in the schools at one time. We had home economics in the school at one time. We had all these things, and people were learning skills. Mm-hmm. These were skills that they could use at home or wherever they went. But now they don't have those skills and then they say, well, there's no skilled labor. Well, I guess not.
Guess what? Yeah. They had a program over in Council Bluffs. What did they call that? Life experience classes. Okay. And they would spend 3 to 4 weeks on a single aspect. How do you change a tire?
Yeah.
See, what else did they have?
How to sew a hem.
Well, Yeah, I think that was one of those things in there. You know, needlework and how to fix clothes that are broken. Broken?
Yeah.
Okay, torn. You know, not working. And engine repair. That one was.
That would be huge.
It was like 6 weeks on that one, and they were small classes, and it wasn't enough to give you everything you needed,
But it did give you something. Yeah.
Right.
You know, other thing too, Rebecca, is that back in the day, all the boys knew how to fix cars.
Yeah, now
I mean,
you need a computer degree.
Yeah, they do. They need a computer degree now to do that. And I know a long time ago when this was after the cars started coming out and they were all computerized and stuff. And he said, I remember I could do all changes. I could change tires. I could go and clean the engine. He said, now to clean the engine is $3,000, you know, if you want to do that, he said. And now when you look at it, it's so foreign, it doesn't even look like an engine. And so we were just talking about how things have changed and how a lot of those skills were left in the schools.
Right.
You know, when they stopped doing this or they stopped doing that, or they stopped with the arts and the crafts and all that stuff. Those were things that people could really use. I know a girl right now, because we used to do all kinds of arts and crafts in school, that I don't know how much, she's built a quilt company on just that, and she sells them all over the world. You know, and so when you take those skills away, it's almost like taking the right hand away.
Exactly.
You know, and so.
Well, I actually took some things to the county fair. And I took a Fair Isle sweater, and that means that it changes colors and has different designs, and it's sort of like those sweaters that have the snowflakes across and everything like that.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And I also took a lace shawl. And oh my Lord, I have never had to work so hard on anything in my life. My husband was describing it as knitting spider silk with toothpicks. It was a really complex pattern. The border was like 20 stitches wide, which isn't very wide, and then a 24-row pattern. But you had to repeat this 24-row pattern 78 times.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Now, I'm really, really good at knitting. Very good at knitting.
I need to learn.
I could, well, I can show you. That's part of my job.
That's what I was thinking.
I was, there wasn't any time during the time I was knitting that border when I could do it by sight. I was reading the directions for every single row 78 times.
78 times.
Whoa. But
no,
I got blue ribbons.
Well, yeah, I bet it did, because Rebecca, you could do that, see. 78 times of doing the same thing is,
yeah.
For me, I'm moving all the time.
Oh, yeah.
I love to put out fires.
The worst part about this is that if you stopped before you got to the end of a pattern, you had no idea where you were.
Well, no, really, exactly. So at 78, well, and I get it. I mean, 78 times I understand, but so, you know, so if someone bought the book, so I ask this question, what can it do for them?
Well, it goes through all the steps. It shows you how to gather the information, and you gather that a way that relates to you the best. Okay. So, for instance, if you like to listen to lectures, then find a lecture about it. If you like to look at pictures, use pictures or watch somebody do it. If you like to read books, then you read about it. However you gather the information, the best.
The best.
Right.
So
and then
you have to identify.
You have to, and that's not the teacher's job, that is the student's job. The student already knows how he learns. The teacher doesn't need to know that. All they have to do is present the material and tell them where they can get it. And here's a visual, here's an audio, here's reading, here's
Oftentimes
like
that doesn't happen.
Never happens. And
I'm glad we're on the same page on that, because I've seen that over and over.
But once they've got the information learned, then they go through it and try to explain it either to somebody else or write it down, like, how does this work? And there will be some blank spots, because if it's not new, then why are you studying it?
Yeah.
So there's got to be something that stretches them, that they don't understand, that they don't know. And then they need to look at those things that they don't know or they can't do yet, because it might be a skill, it might be some information. And then practice that, just that one part that they don't understand until they understand it.
And then they're able to connect it.
Then they put it in to the bigger picture, and now it's old information, and it flows from here to here instead of, and missing line.
Yeah. That's I
even have a workbook at the back.
Oh, so all right. So let's talk about that. So it's called the Fegan method, and is it just for music, or is it just for any way you want to learn?
Everything.
Everything.
I have taught ballet, calculus, history, statistics, English.
Everything. Have you taught Spanish?
Physics, Spanish. Yes. Yes. I actually had to teach a saxophone player how to play saxophone by using physics.
Wow.
I was using quantum theory to explain note reading to him.
Wow.
And he goes, oh, so on his
amazing.
Testimonial, he says, she makes difficult, complex things so easy. And I'm thinking, this is a physicist. Oh gosh, it's saxophone. This is way beyond this. No, it's not.
Way beyond comprehension.
Right. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that was fun.
So, if people wanted to get in contact with you, how would they do that?
Well, I have a website.
Okay.
It's Rebecca at thefeganmethod.com.
Oh, awesome. So, you guys, you have children, you're in a job, you're a leader, whatever. All this Fegan method can work for any of those. So the book is at Amazon and other places.
Yeah, actually, you can pick up a copy at the Bookworm over on 90th and Center.
So at the Bookworm on 90th and
And it's
Center.
also available at the Council Bluffs Public Library and the Omaha Public Library.
Okay. So, and then to get in touch with Rebecca, it is obviously www, but the Fegan, F-E-A-G-A-N.
No,
F-E-G-A-N. Yes, F-E-G-A-N method.
And
the
it has
Fegan
that
method.
in it.
Yeah. Don't forget the
Fegan method.
Rebecca, thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciate learning about the Fegan method. So you go and buy that book, okay?
Yes.
But thank you for being here.
Thank you.
So good for you to come in. Good to see you as always. This is the Business Connection, and we'll see you the next time. Keep reading.